I want to begin by asking the following questions. Do dogs give birth to kittens? Do cows give birth to whales? Do guinea pigs give birth to scorpions? Now we know the answer to all three of these questions, and it is no. Dogs do not give birth to kittens. Why? Because it is against the nature of a dog to give birth to a kitten. Dogs only give birth to dogs. Cows do not give birth to whales because it is against the nature of a cow to give birth to a whale. Cows only make other cows. And guinea pigs do not give birth to scorpions because it is against the nature of guinea pigs to give birth to scorpions. Guinea pigs only give birth to guinea pigs. Now, there may be some individual or individuals who think that dogs can give birth to kittens. And there might be a Gallup poll that indicates that 65% of the American population believe that cows can give birth to whales. And there may be a New York State Assembly that enacts legislation signed by Governor Andre Cuomo that guinea pigs give birth to scorpions. But whatever the individual human being thinks, whatever a Gallup poll finds, and whatever a government body legislates cannot change the objective reality of the nature of things. Dogs do not give birth to kittens, even if any individual may think so. Cows do not give birth to whales, even if 99% of the population polled thinks that it can happen. And guinea pigs do not give birth to scorpions, even if the New York Governor Cuomo signs legislation that guinea pigs now give birth to scorpions, and then he celebrates the legislation next day by marching in the Scorpion Pride Parade. No one, no individual, no group of individuals, and no government body can change the nature of things. And if a government body does legislate something that is against nature, then that legislation may have the appearance of law, but it's not true law. Now we'll take this to another step, the problem of square circles. We know there's no such thing as a square circle, but do you rely on your priest to tell you that there's no such thing as a square circle? No. You know because you know the nature of circles and you know the nature of a square. A four-sided triangle. Do you rely on your bishop or even a pope to tell you that there could be no such thing as a four-sided triangle? And again, we know this cannot be because we know the nature of triangles. It has to have three sides. It can't have four. We know that even if a pope spoke like this, he would not be worth listening to because the pope himself cannot change objective reality. The pope cannot change. The pope himself cannot change the nature of things. He is a witness to the truth, not a maker of it. So all legislation, whether it be from the state or the church, must conform to the nature of things, must be in harmony with objective reality. Again, legislation does not make reality, but objective reality determines whether or not a given legislation or any idea is true. So leaping over a whole series of philosophical examples, I want to come to the case of right and wrong for the individual. How do we judge, how do we know something is right or wrong in human behavior? And I'm going to answer by giving a concrete example, and that is the example of contraception. Now, are you aware of the fact that issues such as contraception and abortion are not necessarily religious issues? They are not really Catholic issues, but issues of the natural moral law. In other words, we know these acts are wrong not only because of church teaching and not only because of sacred scripture, but fundamentally because they are directly against human nature and are against the natural moral law. Both contraception and abortion are against the common sense principle of reason that it is never lawful to exercise an act and reject the end for which the act was designed. It is never lawful to exercise an act and reject the end for which the act is designed. The marital act, I'm not going to go into detail, so don't worry, but the marital act is designed for the generation of human life. That's what it's designed for. And anything that frustrates that end is both against the natural law and divine law, but we're going to concentrate on that principle of reason, the natural law, that it's never lawful to exercise an act and reject the end for which the act is designed. Now, we have no trouble grasping this principle when it comes to eating. Even people who would accept contraception would have a difficulty if I did the following at their house. Suppose you invite me to your house for dinner, and you cook for me my favorite meal, and I sit down at the table and I start eating. Oh, this is great. Oh, this is wonderful. But instead of swallowing the food, I spit it out. And then I eat more, and do the same thing with the next bite, and do the same thing with the next bite, and do the same thing with the next bite. Am I complimenting you who made me that meal, or are you insulted? And here's the point. And why do you know that it's unacceptable behavior? Because, as well as an insult rather to the hostess, because you know that this grotesque activity is contrary to the nature of eating. It's against the purpose of eating, which is the nourishment of the body. Instinctively you know the principle, even if you've never been able to articulate it before, but this is a snapshot of contraception, deriving the pleasure from the act, but frustrating the purpose of the act. And as such, it is against nature itself. So even before we start to quote sacred scripture or church doctrine, we know this act is immoral because it is against reason and against human nature adequately understood. And this is analogous to abortion, although abortion is much worse, because what we have in abortion is the live little baby ripped out and killed, and there the purpose of the marriage act is frustrated. Now, because man has free will, he is the only material creature who can go against his nature. Plants and animals always act in conformity with their nature. But because man is rational and free, he has the power to abuse that freedom and act contrary to his nature, and this, of course, is why abortion, contraception, other crimes against divine and natural law are so commonplace. And a key point I also want to make is that we see by this that morality, what is right and wrong, and modern man really needs to hear this, what is right and wrong, morality does not flow from the will of man, but from the nature of man. Man himself cannot really simply decide what's good or evil, what's acceptable or unacceptable, or leave it up to a majority vote of what's moral or immoral. But man is bound to act in accordance with human nature, adequately understood, and when he uses that freedom to go against his nature, he's acting immorally. So, if morality does not flow from the will of man, but the nature of man, this takes us to the second point of understanding, which in fact, morality does not even flow from the will of God, but from the nature of God. It would be blasphemous to believe that God could create a universe such as ours, where it's wrong to torture babies for fun, and then go ahead and make another universe somewhere else where it is right, it is moral to torture babies for fun. Morality, right or wrong, does not flow from God's will, but from his nature, which is infinite, perfect goodness. Because the Ten Commandments, if you think about them, are in perfect conformity with human nature. No one wants to be the victim of stealing or lying or marital infidelity. And the Ten Commandments likewise flow from God's nature, whose infinite goodness precludes him from lying to us, stealing from us, or being unfaithful to us.